Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
U.S. President Donald Trump told the UN Assembly today, the General Assembly, America would destroy North Korea if forced to defend herself or her allies. He mocked Kim Jong-un. You heard him there in the news saying Rocket Man is on a suicide mission. He also attacked Iran and Islamic State. Trump seems to think that Islamic State is a viable state somewhere in the world. I'm not so sure it is. I've consulted my globe. Can't find Islamic State anywhere. But if you haven't heard what Trump had to say today, I've edited it for you down to 60 seconds. This is what he had to say.
Now North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life. It is an outrage that some nations would not only trade with such a regime, but would arm, supply, and financially support a country that imperils the world with nuclear conflict. No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. That's what the United Nations is for. Let's see how they do.
Donald Trump and his supporters stubbornly refuse to admit that they have been had yet again. And by yet again, every time a president gets elected in the United States, either the alt-left or the alt-right, the alt-left in 2008 when Obama won the election, and the alt-right now stubbornly refuse to admit they've been had. Trump is a Rothschild Zionist who tweeted gleefully today and yesterday that he was enjoying himself in New York City with his handler, Bibi Netanyahu. Trump defines puppet. He is the essence of puppet. And I believe, and I've said it so many times here, he was chosen because of his particular type of acute narcissistic personality disorder. I believe his personality type is ripe. It's primed for those who seek to control people. Easiest to manipulate somebody like him. He is highly suggestible as Trump and will do and say anything. A lot of the time Trump isn't aware of what he's saying or the implications of it. So people were conned into believing he was a maverick, he was anti-system, he was anti-establishment. In fact, the opposite is true. Donald Trump in New York City today. Now, the Liberal Democrat Party, the Liberal Democrats, the Lib Dems, are in the middle of their national party conference. Vince Cable is their recently, uncontested by the way, elected new leader. He spoke today about reversing Brexit, about reversing the democratic decision taken by 52% of those who voted in last June's referendum. Now, the Lib Dems are nobodies. The party was decimated after the 2015 general election, but they're dangerous because they're being supported by the UK media. Here is Vince Cable today addressing the party conference. Listen to this.
And at the end of these tortuous divorce negotiations, the British public must be given a vote on the outcome. And let me be clear about this. This is not a call for a rerun. It is not a call for a second referendum on Brexit. This is a call for a first referendum on the facts. When we know what Brexit means, the people should get the choice. The government deal or an exit from Brexit. We know, of course, that our call will be resented by the Brexit fundamentalists. We'll be denounced as traitors and saboteurs. I'm half prepared for a spell in a cell with Supreme Court judges and Gina Miller and Ken Clarke and the governors of the BBC. But if the definition of sabotage is fighting to protect British jobs and public services and the environment and civil liberties, then I am a proud saboteur.
Well, he's a very brave man. I've an idea. He said there should be a vote on the deal at the end of the negotiations, that either the people adopt the deal or exit from Brexit. Well, that's a load of bollocks, isn't it? That's a monumental load of bollocks. Let's give Cable and his ilk the referendum they want on the deal at the end of the negotiations. Let's give them a choice. The people of this country can choose to either accept the deal or leave the European Union without a deal. How's that, Vince Cable? Who is a vile, anti-democratic serial liar. Slimy bastard Cable, who told the students of this country that were his party elected in 2010, tuition fees would be scrapped. Cable can't spell democracy, let alone practice it. So if you want a referendum, son, you can have one. People get to choose to accept the deal or to walk away without one. But walking away doesn't mean exit from Brexit. Walking away means reverting to World Trade Organization terms. Most favourable terms. Why not? Why not? I'd love to interview that. I'm not going to swear again. And speaking of the European Union, just in case you needed any more reason to get out of the tyrannical dictatorship, listen to this from RT today. I would say you won't believe your ears, but you know all about the EU. This from RT.
The European Union's top court has overruled Italian law, allowing a farmer there to plant genetically modified corn. Now, that's despite every region in the country saying they're against the controversial crop. In 1998, the farmer in question was authorised by the European Court to use specific seeds that reportedly had, quote, no adverse effects on human health or the environment. But nearly 15 years later, he faced fines from the Italian government, who argued that the crops could pose a risk. Well, Italy has previously asked the European Commission to ban the use of GM seeds nationwide, but was turned down. In 2013, they issued a ministerial decree that led to farmers being sued. But this new EU court decision effectively overrules everything. Some farmers in Italy give us their thoughts on the use of genetically modified seeds.
I believe that if Italy has decided that GMOs will not be grown on its territory, that decision has total legitimacy. Those who come to Italy have the opportunity to buy and taste a large amount of local products. These products are the result of years of work and a 100-year-old farming history. What will we gain from GMOs? If a sovereign state decides that certain laws are fundamental to its economy, I don't think it is right that the EU can interfere with those laws.
Yeah, but you see, they can. The Italian authorities, the sovereign state of Italy, that's a joke, it isn't, told farmers the Monsanto seeds are dangerous. Italian law bans genetically modified crops, but the European Union overrules Italian sovereign law and says the farmer who wants to use GM seeds can do so if he likes. Do you need any more reason to break up the European Union? The Jean-Claude Juncker wants to be a political, military, fiscal and economic union within the next 10 years. The death of sovereignty, the biggest step ever to a one-world government. That's the reality of it. And how are we going to get there? How can they do that? Well, they are destroying freedom of speech. We're living on planet dystopia. I spoke last night about the coming crackdown on using the internet to disseminate information. Talked a lot about that last night. Interesting story in The Guardian today of great interest to you and me. The UK electoral watchdog, the Electoral Commission, has produced a government-commissioned paper, and it is recommending, wait for it, that trolls, internet trolls, be banned from voting in elections. I kid you not. Listen to RT's Polly Boyko with the very interesting report.
Well, look, we know that the internet, and in particular the Twitter sphere, can be a pretty nasty place. If you're a public figure, you've got to have a thick skin to be on there, and more so if you are a politician. So this suggestion to stop online trolls from voting in general elections, it's come from the Electoral Commission, because we know that some 87% of politicians experienced pretty horrifying abuse in the last general election campaign. One politician that's been particularly affected by it is the veteran Labour MP Diane Abbott. She's also the Shadow Home Secretary. Take a listen to what she's said about it.
I've had death threats. I've had people tweeting that I should be hung. 30 years ago, when I first became an MP, if you wanted to attack an MP, you had to write a letter, usually in green ink, you had to put it in an envelope, you had to put a stamp on it, and you had to walk to the post box. Now they press a button and you read vile abuse, which 30 years ago people would have been frightened to even write down.
And it doesn't really matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. There are both Labour and Conservative MPs who have been subjected to pretty nasty abuse, and research shows that it's a particularly big problem for women and politicians of ethnic minorities. So examples of the types of abuse that politicians had during the last election campaign was one Conservative candidate being racially abused at a polling station. Another Conservative MP, Cheryl Murray, her election posters were actually covered with swastikas, and a Labour MP, a former Labour MP, he was actually physically assaulted at the polling station when he went to vote, or when he was delivering leaflets, sorry. And because Twitter is such a major conduit for the majority of the abuse that these politicians get, this suggestion from the Electoral Commission has been being seen as a potential deterrent. So maybe get people to stop and think before they type their poisonous messages on their keyboard.
Poisonous messages. Now, you won't be surprised that the Electoral Commission has neglected to define what exactly a troll is. Leave it nice and vague. As I said last night, leave it vague. Refuse to define. Because by defining, you see, you create. You don't so much create a league. It isn't so much of a legal thing. But by defining it, you narrow your own scope, or you narrow the scope of those you can go after. So by not defining it, leaves it nice and vague, and you can say troll must be banned whenever you feel like it. If somebody is saying something about you on Twitter that you don't like, block him or her. Ignore. Many years ago, the great Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the most successful football managers that ever lived, was upset because the press were giving him dogs abuse. This is back in 1989. Sir Matt Busby, of the Busby Babes fame, who passed away in 1994, said to Ferguson, "What's up with you?" Ferguson said, "I'm being destroyed in the paper." Sir Matt Busby said, "Why do you read them? Don't read them. Ignore them. Tweet away to your heart's content. When somebody gets abusive, block them and report. Simples. We have enough laws to cover threats and abuse. Use the laws that are already there. But it is arguable that they're testing the water with this one, because imagine where that could eventually lead. You know, if something you say online meant or means or could mean that your vote was taken away, imagine where that could eventually lead.